Welcome to Validated. Today we're doing something a little different. We have a new series on Constellation, the new proposal for multiple concurrent proposers, or MCP, from the folks at Anza. Multiple concurrent proposers has been a long time coming and a hotly debated topic. There's a lot of great podcasts covering Constellation at a high level, so we dispense with the overview and dive right in. If this is your first time hearing about Constellation, this might not be the easiest entry point. Throughout these episodes, my goal is not to pass judgment on MCP, but to ask hard questions of opponents and supporters, and to better inform the community ahead of a public debate and ultimately the SIMD process. In service of this dialogue, you'll hear me represent positions I may not hold, asking questions that may seem unfair. This is an interviewer's job, not to make themselves look good, but to tease out the best arguments from our guests. First up, we have Ben from Temporal, followed by Brennan from Anza. I recommend watching them in the order that they are released. Hope you enjoy. Welcome to the world's most esoteric DeFi podcast.
Is that so?
We'll see. Ben from Temporal, Humidifi, Nozomi. What did I miss?
A lot of things.
Many
things.
Many
Many things which
things.
you actually don't know about. But,
Okay. So many secret things.
Some the ecosystem will soon know about. Other things that we do all sorts of things.
Okay. Incredible.
Many things.
Well, welcome to Validated. Thanks for joining today.
Thank you.
We're going to be talking about a bunch of stuff. Don't worry, we will get to MCP and we will get to all of the...
It's finally a proposal now.
We have a single concurrent proposal for multiple concurrent proposers. I think today. Great.
I'm like, yeah.
That feels about right.
I think that makes sense.
Well, we also have MCP and MCP trademark, right? Which are not necessarily the same thing. We'll get into all of that. I think as a scene set, I want to talk a little bit about competition on Solana and Solana DeFi. Because I think from a lot of people's perspective, you guys and Temporal, Humidifi, Nozomi, the whole thing came out of nowhere. But I've known you guys for a little while. You've actually been working on this stuff for a while. Walk me through the origin of Temporal and how you guys started building here.
Right into it, huh?
Yeah.
Well, I'm doing good today, Austin. Thank you. Thank you for asking.
Yes. The people care about how you feel. They really care about DeFi.
All right, so let's talk about it, right? So, yeah, I mean, obviously, a lot of experienced, market makers, traders, HFT folks on our team. Kevin, whom we work with from SCP. Also a lot of trading experience. Look, I think Solana was a very different place a year ago, and look, there was clearly a lot missing, right? It was obviously a big opportunity for us, monetarily, right? Part of the motivation is obviously just we make money market making, which makes sense, right? But then the other thing is, right, it's also really, really good for the eco, right? I think traditionally, right, centralized exchanges, they've been beating us on fills, they've been beating us on spreads, they've been beating us on volume, they've been beating us by pretty much any and every single metric that you can imagine.
Everything but anonymity.
Yeah, so... God damn it.
Yes.
But we're changing that, right? And Humidifi is one of the first steps we've taken to change this, right? So prior to Humidifi, right, I think the network was largely dominated by Solfi. Prior to Solfi, I think the network was largely dominated by Liquidity, and it's each iteration, right? We've seen improvement, right? And that competition pushes all of us to be better, and importantly pushes all of us to make the ecosystem.
Yeah.
Right. It's if you look at the I don't have this graph on me, but if you look at the trend of average fills, right? That retail's getting on routers, your Jukes, your Titans, your D-flows of the world, right? What you'll see is pretty much this line of just these things coming down and down and down and down and down over time, right? And it's I think I'll have to post this graph once the podcast is over, but this graph cannot be a clearer illustration of the good that competition you asked me about has done for the ecosystem, right? I mean, the average fills retail are getting on chain. Those fills, I mean, they're better than the fills they get on centralized exchanges, right? There's some centralized exchanges, I won't name them, that take 100 bips a fee. That's insane, right? I don't know how people are memeing all these trading terminals for taking 100 bips when the centralized exchanges literally do the same thing. And then, even the biggest crypto centralized exchanges, right? They're still taking like 10 bips for retail, right? And it's like, you look at the average fills on Solana, they're like a few bips, right?
Yeah.
And as we continue to improve on the tech, those fills are going to get better and better and better and better.
Sure. So let's go back to, you were talking about a year and a half ago, Solana DeFi was very different. A lot of stuff was broken. At the same time, like, President of the United States launched a meme coin on a Friday that went up to $70 billion and then went
Friday night,
sadly down to basically $0. But like, that was this crazy moment where I heard from folks who work in strategy at centralized exchanges, and they were basically like, man, this whole thing happened while we were asleep. Not obviously literally asleep, but like, their exchanges were dark through this entire period. By the time Monday morning came around, they're like, okay, how do we get a Trump token ETF?
Yeah.
Trump token was over.
Yeah.
So like, from that perspective, Solana DeFi kind of did fairly well, right? It managed to capture hype and then offload hype quite efficiently from the outsider perspective. What did you guys see as like, actually a lot of stuff's still broken here?
Yeah, I mean, it's this was one scenario, right? Or was another one, right? And there was the Juke launch, right? There were many big events like this on Solana, and I have to say, out of all of them, I think Trump was handled the best of all of them thus far, right? Like, Trump has been the most recent stress test on the network. I don't think there's been a real stress test on mainnet since that day. Right. And like, you
don't think 1010 was particularly stressful for Solana DeFi? It was obviously for centralized exchanges.
In terms of like the load on the chain, it definitely was not as stressful. But like, in terms of the load on the market makers and the risks and the volatility, that was unprecedented. And it's like, look, if you're a centralized exchange and especially running something like Perps or anything with leverage, really, and your whole job is just to stay solvent, and then all of a sudden the markets crash. I don't know how much in one day. It was a lot. Right? Yeah. It's very, very stressful on the centralized exchanges and the market makers, obviously. But in terms of like raw network load, Trump was definitely heavier. And really, I think, even though some people struggled to land during Trump, if you compare to some of the last major stress test events, like right,
or just like.
No, yeah, I mean,
basically breaking the network for 2 weeks.
It, right? Yeah. Like, you have folks like Alessandro and like the Financer team. Like all these guys, they've been doing immense work across the entire networking stack, right, to make sure that what happened with Or way back when, right, will not happen again, right?
Yeah.
And like, clearly we see that a lot of that work has paid off, right? Because during the Trump launch, right, like, look, that's a lot of traffic. You can only handle so much traffic, right? And we're working to improve the throughput of the protocol, like, day and night. Everyone is us, Anza, Financer, et cetera, right? But like, yeah, look, everything has a limit eventually, right? But look, I think the protocol worked exactly as designed during that launch, right? The people that were struggling to land, they just weren't bidding high enough, right? The blocks were completely full, right? There's a finite amount of block space. You need to bid higher for that block space, right? I think the one criticism that I had at the time, and I kind of do still have, are these stake-weighted QoS rate limits. But I think Anza is moving toward getting rid of those as well. So, I mean, we're really going the right direction here in terms of maximizing throughput. IDRL, something, right? You know what they say.
So, yeah, I'd say one of the things that's interesting about you guys is you don't exactly fit into the category of like a traditional DeFi protocol. You don't fit in the category of a traditional hedge fund or prop trading firm or something like that. There's something kind of different. So like, walk me through a little bit of how Temporal has evolved over the years and the stuff you guys are actually doing today.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, like the firm is very makeshift, right? We have many lines of business, right? We've got validators, we've got Nozomi, we've got Humidifi, right? Like, we've got, various other like trading ops, right? Like, we do all sorts of, many more things on top of all that. Really, I think, look, like, first and foremost, we're really big believers in DeFi as just technology in general, right? Like, I think the first thing that really got me into Solana and into DeFi was, really just sending transactions on DeFi for the first time on Serum. Rest in peace.
R.I.P.
Rest in peace. And it's like, as broken as the network was back then, right? And, like, for all the issues we were having at the time, it was enough for me to like see the potential, right?
Yeah.
And I think since then, like, all the work I've done and all the work the team has done at Temporal, has been in the spirit of making DeFi better, right? Because at the end of the day, right, like I think there are massive benefits of decentralization. There's massive benefits of transparency, right? There's massive benefits of, everyone verifiably playing by the same rules, right? And like if you look at these centralized exchanges, like there's just a lot of games that are played, and you can't really prove that certain games are being played. But like on the blockchain, everything's really transparent, right? It's also accessible to people all over the world, right? Like really in any jurisdiction, right? You have jurisdictions where people can't even hold bank accounts. Hell, I can barely even hold a bank account in the U.S. jurisdiction. I've been debanked like so many times. Like we're solving actual problems out here.
Only ones for me, but yes.
Yeah, I mean we're solving actual problems out here, right?
So when you guys kind of, I'm curious about this because one of the things that Kyle Samani had been saying for years was that the resistance against vertical integration in DeFi was a mistake. It was leaving a ton of money on the table. If you kind of look at what you guys are doing at Temporal, like there's sort of a landing service, right? There's a block building service with Harmonic. There is a market making service as part of Temporal. There's actually a prop AMM as part of Temporal. Like, how much of the success of your various products do you think is due to those individual products versus having built all these components in-house?
Yeah, look, I mean, I'll say, I prefer the terminology complementary product offerings instead of...
Look, I'm a capitalist. There's nothing wrong with vertical integration. I just, like the Coinbase card, for example, that gives you 4% on Bitcoin, it only works because they have all these other types. It's like the US 30-year mortgage doesn't make any sense unless you also layer in checking account and investing accounts. And like, there's a reason this stuff often becomes vertically integrated. And in crypto, for years, we've sort of talked about it as like, oh, it's an inevitability of like the banks can't establish trust. But you don't have that problem in crypto, right? Well, you can very gladly use an RPC provider that's unaffiliated with your market maker.
The worst of all vertical integration is Ticketmaster liveness, and by far, like it's not even close. The levels of MEV that these people are doing, unprecedented.
7.5% MEV,
unprecedented, right? And it's like, okay, like it's not like, we're evil, like trying to like squeeze everyone, right? It's like there were a lot of holes in the ecosystem, and we're just building what needs to be built, and we're filling the holes that need to be filled, right? If you look at the ecosystem, I think there's conflicts of interest everywhere. They're all around us, right? Like I'm sure you could probably list like 10 more conflicts of interest in the Solana ecosystem alone, probably within like a minute of thinking about it, right? Yeah. I mean, like, right? So yeah, I mean, I obviously admit there are conflicts of interest in our product offerings, and yes, that like sometimes our product offerings are complementary, but
right.
But
like it's funny because in the traditional world, we just call a conflict of interest between two organizations a business partnership.
Yeah.
Like I don't think anyone would say that like Jaguar and Google have a conflict of interest over Waymo.
Yeah, I mean,
right?
Well, like this is just like I'm calling it complementary product offering.
Sure.
You can't make everyone happy, I suppose. Like ultimately, I don't think we should be measuring people like in an ecosystem this small by how many conflicts of interest you have, right? You should be measuring people by their contributions, right? And how much they're contributing to the ecosystem, right? At the end of the day, if I did 3 things that no one else was going to do, you can complain about it, right? You can try to cancel me.
Right.
But at the end of the day, all 3 of these products solve, all of our products, they solve real problems. They have real users, right? They've been massively beneficial to the ecosystem in so many ways, right? Like our users love all of our products, right? Well, look, I mean, I think the contributions speak for themselves, right? So people can say what they want, but like at the end of the day, like I don't know, like we made spreads way tighter, right? Like Harmonic has a level of throughput that no other block packing, block propagation type system has ever achieved, right? Nozomi is the fastest way to land a transaction on the network today, right? I mean, like people, we're solving real problems out here, Austin. We solve hard problems at Temporal.
There you go. So when you look at something like Humidifi, there is a theory I've heard sometimes out there that Humidifi is not orders of magnitude better than other prop AMMs, except because you have a transaction landing service and because there's a block building system involved, that like combination is what gives it a pretty high performance above some of its competitors. Would you agree with that characterization, or do you think it comes from?
I would agree with the Nozomi part. I would disagree with the harmonic part, right? So one of the, traditionally, I mean, I'll start with the Nozomi part, right? Like traditionally, some of the hardest problems in Solana, right?
And Nozomi is your transaction landing system.
Correct, right? Extremely fast, right? Won't go into detail of how it works, but like, just test it out. It'll be faster than everyone else, right? So it's like in market making, there's a kind of two things that kind of matter and that kind of dominate, right? One of those things is just like, how fast are you? Like, what's your raw speed that you can react to new information, right? And then the second problem is, how good is your information? How good are your alphas, right? How good are your models, right? Do you have a good model on the price? Do you have a good model on the volatility? Like all of these things, right? So it is an obvious advantage that we can land faster than everyone else, right? And that comes from hard work and a lot of research that we, put into Nozomi. So yeah, I mean, obviously not going to deny that's very complimentary. And I mean, it's just like anyone can use it, right? Our competitors opt not to send to it for obvious reasons. But I mean, if they wanted to, we would actually let them.
Yeah.
Now the second thing is this harmonic thing. So we're actually not giving ourselves any advantages on harmonic, none whatsoever, right? And if we did, it'd be very, very obvious in the data. Right?
Oh, sure. There'd be transactions in there that aren't paying enough fee or whatever.
Well, I mean, it'd be all sorts of things, right? It'd be like we'd be paying a less fee, making orders of magnitude more money in our own slots, way more money than like everyone else, right? Like you'd see statistically significant differences in like the markouts at 2 second, 5 second, these like short-term horizons over the leader window, right? In our leader slots, you see none of these, right? I've looked into all this data because like we take this like very, very seriously, right?
Yeah.
And if any of the data even looks like we're giving ourselves advantages, right? That's like really concerning to me, and like we want to figure out why the data would even look like that, because we're obviously not doing that. But I looked at the data and, well, it doesn't look like that, right? Because we're not doing it. So, look, I mean, people can make accusations without data all the time. You can just say things, like I think there's a lot of people that say a lot of things, but ultimately we're facts driven and we're a data driven people at Temporal. That's like really one of our core tenets, is back everything up with data, back everything up with logic, back everything up with reason, be maximally objective. Like, we have so much data. I think we probably have some of the best data infrastructure in the entire ecosystem, and we're not even a data company or an RPC company, right? This data is so like infinitely valuable, right? And then beyond that, Humidifi has other advantages, right? Like one is we actually have pretty good models behind Humidifi, such as like predictive pricing models, right? Which like, that's not a secret. You can kind of see it on chain, right? Because you'll look on chain, right? And you'll see that we do a trade, and that trade looks unprofitable at first, but like over the next few seconds, it will become profitable because we predicted that the price was going to move, right? And it's like harmonic can't do that, right? Like harmonic doesn't even see the future, right? It's like you're seeing us make money like several seconds after we do the trade, right? Like there's much better explanations for why Humidifi is successful than, oh my god, they must be doing something with harmonic, right? But admittedly, being able to land a transaction very fast is, it's an obvious advantage, right? That's why the top HFT firms are building FPGAs now. Actually, those are dated. They're building ASICs now. I mean, there's probably, this stuff's not even a CPU anymore, right? They're just circuits that take in the data and like spit out other data, right? Like, it's crazy what's going on in HFT. But
yeah, it's very interesting.
Yeah.
So, just to sort of like take a step back on like the philosophical level here.
Yeah.
There was a lot of hay made a few years ago about more and more DeFi being built closed source.
Yeah.
You saw this kind of start in Ethereum. It scaled up in Solana.
Yeah.
At one point, something like 50% of all majorly used Solana programs were closed source.
Yeah.
At the same time, you've kind of had this little bit of a bifurcation going on between, in Ethereum DeFi again, it started where you had off-chain matching.
Yeah.
And then it was like, okay, we're just using the chain for settlement.
Yeah.
And there's kind of an argument you see now from some folks that like, a lot of the logic for a prop AMM lives off-chain, and somehow this is not good, or this is something different. Let's just put it that way, right? That's a narrative you'll often see on Twitter.
Yeah,
and I guess, and so I guess sort of two questions, which is like, for you, is there a meaningful difference between an off-chain closed source program and an on-chain closed source program?
There is.
Okay,
Because
let's start
it's
there.
Composable with other on-chain open source programs, right? That's actually a huge property of Solana that's extremely valuable is composability, right? So yeah, look, you want the Humidify source code? Not giving it to you. You want the predictive price models? Not giving that to you either. You want Nozomi? I mean, like, you can use it, but I'm not going to tell you how it works, right? But you don't need any of these things. You don't even need any of these things for like a trustless, user swap environment, right? Because all you need is to actually trust the router, right? Because the router goes in, right? It does the swap, and then it says, oh, did this thing steal my money? Oh, just revert the transaction, right? Because in Solana, you have an atomicity of transactions, right? Look, like that means if a prop AMM rugs me, right, I can just revert the whole transaction and not route any more flow to that transaction. There's literally no harm done whatsoever, right? It's like the thing that's important to like audit and to like, at least have some notion of trust. I mean, like ideally it's all open source, right? But like I get their routers are a very competitive environment. Like at the very least, all the top, audit routers, even though they're not fully open source, they are audited by several reputable, parties like our friends at, AutoSec and Offside, right? Like a lot of good auditing firms, take a look at these routers, and at least there's, someone you can rely on as the user to say, like, this thing's not going to steal all your money. The prop AMM, like, it just can't steal all my money, right? And it's like it's by design. Like, the routers consider this in their threat models, right? The prop AMMs are untrusted by nature, right? So you can have 20 untrusted entities that all participate in a system that the user can trust, right? Because the router contract itself is open source or audited, right? Or trusted by the user, right? This CPIs and composes over all the prop AMMs. And then even though you don't have the code for any of the prop AMMs, it still guarantees that the user gets the best fill in a way that is, transparent and, auditable, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I think, so the piece I'm kind of like walking us into here is there's a lot of focus on, like, and you've mentioned this, other people mention this, like, how close are the fills to true price?
Yeah.
Right? Are they 100 bips off? Are they 10 bips off? Are they 1 bip off? Are they sometimes better than true price because you have predictive modelings about where you think true price will go, and so you give the user something better than they asked for because you really want to make sure you capture the order flow.
Yeah.
There's a lot of like nerd sniping that takes place in trading, where it's like, oh, well, you've got 6 bips, I have 5, therefore I'm better for the user. I guess, like, at the same time, we've seen sort of Ethereum DeFi devolve into like just communism where no one can make any money. And like that is a real thing that happened with PBS, is we took systems that had huge amounts of extraction and we took them down to functionally zero extraction, and now they're functionally unprofitable for everyone to build blocks in. What is, I guess, in your view, like, what is the optimal amount of greed? Like when you guys are designing products, like how do you balance the desire and need to make money with like a competitive open environment where users and routers can just route away from you?
Yeah, so like, I mean, like, obviously we're very long-term aligned with Solana as a network, right? Like we take this very seriously. We've been contributing to Solana for, like over 5 years, right? Like even though the Temporal has not, existed for 5 years, like I've been in the ecosystem that long. People on my team have been in the ecosystem that long, and we've been making core contributions, PRs, building apps, whatever, you name it, for years and years and years and years and years, right? And we've already reaped the benefits of like long-term investments in this ecosystem, right? And it's like, like we've seen firsthand why you should invest in the long-term success of the network instead of short-term profit, right? So like, look, like we obviously have employees to pay, we have a business to run, right? Like, yeah, we are a business. We need to make money, right? That's like, I'm not pretending we're not a business. We absolutely are 100%, right? But we're a business that I think is very complementary to the Solana ecosystem, right? Like I think that when we win, I want all of Solana to win too, right? Like we're looking for like win-win, grow the pie kind of scenarios, right? And Humidify was one of those things. Right. Yes, we made a good amount of money on Humidify. Like it still does make, decent money, but it also massively benefited Solana as an ecosystem, right? Like I don't think, anyone disagrees with it's done, it's just doing $1 billion of volume a day at one point, right? Like when volume was super high, it's still doing like hundreds of millions of volume a day in like spot Solidity sets. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. That's a lot of volume, right? So and then specifically, I'd say to answer your question, it's very case by case, right? Like we obviously want to be a successful business and like make money, right? But like we're not just going to do something that just completely kills the network, right? Like despite what our competitors may say, everything that we've done, is actually because we believe it'll be good for Solana, not just short term, but also long term.
Yeah.
We believe that about everything, every single thing that we've built, right? Especially Harmonic, right? Which is funny because that's the one that people criticize the most as being short term. And like, we can talk more about that if you want, right? But
Yeah.
everything we built for Solana.
I want to hang on prop AMMs for a second because you made a really good point about on-chain being composable versus a matching engine off-chain is different.
Yeah.
One of the parts of prop AMMs that people often gloss over is the prop part, right?
Yeah.
This is a very different type of financial arrangement than Camino or, any type of like more classic like Uniswap or something like that, where the capital to make markets, we don't call it making markets, the capital to
Provide liquidity.
balance a function and provide liquidity comes from user capital, permissionless capital that flows into a system. Prop AMMs work differently. How much of that is a technical necessity and how much of that is a business decision?
Well, I mean, if we wanted to, we could open up deposits, right? But that just creates also, I mean, it's extra complexity in the thing that we have to add, right? Now, like, if God forbid, like, something happens to the protocol, like, we're now responsible for, like, losing user funds, right? Like, I don't want anything to do with that right now. Like, granted, I think the Humidifi contract is 100% secure, right? Like, we put a lot of effort into it, and it's been recently audited by OSEC, so all good there. But it's complexity, it's just extra risk, and look, it's a capacity constrained strategy, right? I ain't giving out the profits for free. I mean,
right. So I guess implicitly then you're saying, because what normally, like, if you just sort of like set aside a bunch of like the crypto culture we've been with for a while here, right? If you could say, well, if I could increase deposits on it by 10x and I could make 10x the profit, sure, then I would give up a certain amount of percentage to users who are putting money into this thing, right? This is the classic, like, there should be a fee switch in Uniswap type thing.
Yeah.
So like, I guess walking me through, like, what's different about a prop AMM where the ability to go from like $10 million of TVL to $100 million of TVL is not worth it to you guys from that perspective?
I mean, what do you think the distribution of swap sizes looks like on Solana? What do you think is like the average swap size, the median swap size, the P90 swap size?
So I would say if we get rid of swaps that are like below, let's call it $5, like stuff that's like just, whatever.
How much of the tail do you think you cut off already? Like, did you cut off everything, like the 20% off?
I think we cut off probably 30%. I would guess that the average is probably somewhere around $1,500.
Okay.
What does it actually look like?
I mean, I think like we're probably not far off, right? Like, I don't have the exact numbers on or in my head right now. Like, the key thing I wanted to illustrate is all those things are well under the TVL of Humidifi, right?
Right. You don't see people coming in and like trying to swap 20 mil of SOL for USDC or something.
Yeah, look, and it's kind of a cold start problem, right? It's tough to quote that depth today because the only taker at that depth is like Wintermute, right?
Yeah, because this is the criticism that like Ethereum DeFi throws at other ecosystems, not just Solana, but even L2 DeFi all the time. Is like, look, it's cute that your programs run really efficiently. If you can't do size on the thing, it's just different.
Yeah, so look, I mean, like, I think you probably need some kind of bootstrapping of the system here, right? Like, if there were more swaps at higher sizes, like if there were more like 7-figure or even 8-figure swaps daily, we would increase our liquidity in a heartbeat, right? Because that's just what makes sense, right? Like, we're ready to do it as soon as people start, hurling more of those swaps. And the fills on swaps of even 8 figures are like, if you go across Bison Fi, Tessera, Humidifi, even SolFi, like, you could probably route across some combination of those. The fills are not terrible, right?
Right. Compared to OTC or a centralized exchange.
And we see more and more of those fills. We're happily going to increase the liquidity, right? Maybe we need a bit of a catalyst here, right? Like, maybe we need a bit of either like maker or taker incentives or some, combination of both. That if you do a large enough swap, right, you may qualify for some incentive, like as both the maker and the taker. But like, I do think naturally as retail volume increases and, even as institutional takers, like buy-side traders start to come more onto the chain, I think you will see the prop AMMs slowly increase their liquidity, right? Like if you look a year ago, there was way less liquidity than there is now, right? Like it is trending in the right direction, right? These things just take time unless you want to catalyze it.
Why do you think liquidity is going up when like swaps and also, quite frankly, crypto prices are going down?
Yeah, so I mean, like part of it is this competition that we mentioned, right? Like adding more liquidity makes you more competitive to get routed the larger swaps when they do happen, right? So competition is definitely a big part of it, right? And then the second thing is like I think, and maybe like again, this is like pretty reflexive here, right? But like you've seen more and more of the larger swaps start to like come in. There's more of these big 7-figure, 8-figure swaps now, right? So it's probably some combination of like both of these, right? And it is hard to measure the cause and effect here because of this reflexivity that we've been talking about. But like I imagine that the liquidity will continue slowly trending in the up direction.
Hey guys, we're about to get into what I would consider the spiciest section of the podcast, and we're going to talk a lot about the Constellation proposal and its trade-offs. Before we get into it, I did want to clarify what I mean when I say the leader can delay transactions. So essentially, for a leader proposer pair to be able to include their own transactions, they only need 64 attestations because they can selectively cherry pick attestations that are favorable to them. Conversely, the leader can also exclude attestations that include a transaction that said leader wants to delay. In the happy path for the leader, it wins this race and it can include a front run transaction, one or more cycles, before the competing TXs reach that 192 attestation threshold. But even if it manages to land, or even if this leader proposer pair manages to land that transaction in the same cycle, they can still include the TX in the same cycle with fee plus epsilon. So the front run still happens. It's still bad for the user, but in this case, the revenue is just split with the protocol instead of that particular leader proposer pair capturing all the revenue for themselves. The paper also appears to give the leader some discretion to skip cycles in a 4-slot/block layer window. So this is 32 cycles, is my understanding, at least as the paper is written today and as the Solana spec is written today. And the paper notes that a leader can choose the C start on each slot. This would basically allow it, if the previous block ended on cycle 10, I could maybe actually start on cycle 12 or cycle 13 or cycle 14. This creates new avenues for delaying transactions, front running, etc. But the paper is still in its early stages, so I expect a lot to change. And really, hopefully, this discussion should really help inform that future change. And again, just wanted to reiterate that, I and, Temporal and Harmonic, we're by no means against MCP. Through our critique, we really just aim to acknowledge the trade-offs and lay them all out so we can help ourselves and everyone else make what we think is the best decision for Solana long term. So without further ado, enjoy the next section.
I want to pivot a little bit. I want to chat about multiple concurrent proposers and Constellation.
Constellation. Yeah, we actually have a proposal now that we can talk about.
We have a proposal. This is, I think, what a lot of us have been waiting for a while. Is like we're no longer debating things in the shadows.
No, it's a real proposal.
A goddamn white paper.
Yeah,
which is great.
It's a real proposal that's out there, right?
Yeah.
Let's talk about it. What do you want to know, Austin?
So I want to start at sort of the lead-in to this. And I've got Anza on in 2 days, so we're going to get multiple perspectives on this whole thing. I'm trying to talk to a bunch of market makers too. So if you're watching and you're a market maker on Solana, I would love to talk to you.
Nice.
Because I think there's a lot of emotion and there's not a lot of hard information about this stuff.
I mean, I completely agree. Like one of my first criticisms of the paper is that I think the motivation is the most important thing, and the paper has no empirical motivation. Right now, there's
I want to get into this, right?
About the paper, by the way, and we'll talk about those.
Totally, I want to get into
motivation is everything. But I thank you for talking to everyone.
But let's start with the motivation, because there's a few things that have been said over the last few years, which I would say are maybe observably true, and then we'll see how strong you think the link is.
Yeah.
The first is Solana does not have a high performance Perps infrastructure at the moment.
Yeah,
that is that is just true, and There's a lot of people who were very dismissive of Hyperliquid when it came up. Oh, this is just Polygon 2.0, and largely wrong.
Some people were so early to this. There were people sounding the alarm about Hyperliquid, and a year later after the airdrop, and it stole all the Perps, people were like, oh,
maybe this is important.
We should have been paying attention to that the whole time.
So there's been a perception for a while, and these are the moments I love, because you have very smart people who are at the same organizations saying the opposite things.
Yep.
But one thing that has been said for a while is that there's something about the current technical structure of Solana that makes a high-performance Perps exchange not possible to build on chain. Let's just start with, where do you land on that conjecture?
Well, I think it's largely false. It's not completely false, but I think it's largely false, right? Like, I think the valid criticisms of the protocol are when you say, I don't have enough on-chain compute. On-chain compute is expensive, or I can't fit enough compute into my transaction to run my complex risk models. I think that's very valid. I don't have enough storage on-chain to fit my complex risk models. Also valid, right? What's not valid is the ordering. Because of the ordering, the spreads on Perps are going to be really bad, even though the spreads on Spot are this tight with that same exact ordering, right? Like, make it make sense, right? Like, I get that there's some aspect of risk here that can make a market maker more risk averse. But if you look at drift, even drift, right, with like, look, I mean, I've been public. I don't think chit liquidity is my favorite mechanism for like market making, right?
Sure.
And it's like, I've said this, I've told this to them too. But overall, I think Drift did a lot of things very well. The product is really, really good. Like, I think their branding is really, really good, right? Like, even all the marketing stunts they pulled, very, very good. They did a good job attracting users. These people clearly understand product very well. They clearly understand marketing very well, and the tech was, it fulfilled its purpose, right? Like, the JIT liquidity did net them a lot of volume, and that same JIT liquidity did get single-digit bips fills on this chain today. That's actually really, really good, right? And like, with a better like matching engine, they could have pushed those fills like sub bip.
Right. So one thing I just like to scene set for folks, right? Today, Hyperliquid has no enforced ordering. People get this wrong all the time. There's no enforced ordering on Hyperliquid. What there is enforced cancel prioritization. But there's actually nothing that says, of the non-cancel types of orders, yours will go ahead of mine because yours hit the API first, or something along those lines, right? So I think one thing that like I'm trying to get people to be more specific is what their actual criticisms are, because if ordering, like if you look at Hyperliquid and say ordering is what made it good, well, a subset of ordering, right?
I want the ability to be more specific about that too, Austin. Thankfully,
so the ability to prioritize certain types of orders at the application's discretion has been like a thing for a while. This time last year, application-controlled execution was like all the rage, ACE, right? This was the idea that an application could set its own rules based on a type of framework that it wanted to say, these types of transactions will always, if I want, whether it's my VIP user transactions to go in first, or if I want cancels to go in first, I, as an application developer, have the ability to do that.
You can already do it.
Tell me more.
Yeah. So ACE, right? Our favorite way to achieve ACE is the way that removes any upstream dependencies and relies only on the rules of the protocol, right? So you use your slot as the tick, and one thing that'll help a lot is lowering the slot times. We're very, very, very big proponents of lower slot times. And KV even made a SIMD to, I think, reduce the leaders in a row, or the number of slots in a row that the same leader has, which has a similar effect, right? But essentially, you need a tick that like your applications can listen to on chain, right? And then you can do you can put these things in your program called AMQs, asynchronous market queues, right? And basically, what I do is the program is, if I want cancel prioritization, I'm running an order book, right? I'll see all my cancels come in, right? The cancels get executed same tick. The takes, you can put those off to the subsequent tick, right? Now, look. My personal view on cancel prioritization is it's kind of BS, and it's not going to fix any of our problems. But I want applications to have as much design space as possible and to be able to experiment with whatever they want. And this is already possible today with asynchronous market queues, and you can even do it composably.
Okay, so I want to, like, you said something there that's like quite interesting, which is that you don't think cancel prioritization is as big of a deal as people made it out to be.
Like,
I've heard something similar from someone building a Perps DEX on Solana at the moment.
Yeah.
But like the like 90 IQ Twitter space believes
the toxic flow.
They believe that cancel prioritization on Hyperliquid is one of the defining features of why Hyperliquid is as popular as it is.
Yeah.
What would you say to that?
I mean, I don't know. Look at Binance, NYSE, NASDAQ. These guys don't have cancel prioritization. It's true. Like, it's just clearly possible.
But they have a much more dependable landing experience, right? Like, if you are running...
So does Hyperliquid. Hyperliquid's a centralized exchange.
So if that's true, right? Like, if we sort of take this conjecture that, like, the physical co-location of Hyperliquid is... And, you know, there's going to be a lot of people in the comments section about this whole episode. I want to say, for starters, my goal is to get you to explain clearly what you're talking about, right? And then I'm going to do the same thing with Anza next week.
Yeah.
The piece I'm really curious about here is if that is sort of like the default assumption, is that you need effectively a latency equalized, centralized, like very similar to how at NYSE and NASDAQ, you've got the same cable length to every trade server. What is your view of how something that does have a rotating leader schedule, that does have servers all around the world and validators all around the world, could ever build something that rivals the fill rates and the quotes and the type of experience you get trading on Binance or Hyperliquid?
Yeah, look, I mean, I think even if our depth isn't rivaling centralized exchanges yet, you know, like our spreads and our quotes certainly are, right? And, you know, we just talked about the depth thing, right? And, you know, how to kind of solve this depth thing.
But sorry, just to like one could say that's largely because crypto exchanges are the JV team. That, like, sorry guys, the folks working at centralized crypto exchanges are not as good as the folks working at NYSE and NASDAQ.
Oh yeah, they're not.
Right? And like that, like, for starters, they all run in the cloud, right? And setting all that aside for a second.
They have FPGAs and ASICs, right? You know, thank God for 00, right? We're going to have FPGAs and ASICs too, Austin. It's what we need, right? I mean, like, at some point you run into these bottlenecks, like the amount of bandwidth that NASDAQ and NYSE handle every day. It's just like people have no
absurd amounts of bandwidth.
Right? They're like, oh, you know, we're going to crush NASDAQ. I'm like, you know, we've got a lot of work to do. We're going to do that in a distributed system, which, as you mentioned, makes our lives like 100% harder.
Right. Oh, sure. And it might be worth it for a ton of other reasons. But like, what would you say, like, if someone was like, all right, Ben, what's your roadmap? What's your solution here? How do you move Solana to be as competitive as it can on Perps?
Yeah.
The same way it's quite competitive right now on Spot.
Yeah.
And you do that without sacrificing the idea of a permissionless global validator set.
Yeah, look, so like I think in terms of matching, right, we're moving in the right direction, right? We have market makers that are running almost all their logic on the on-chain, which is what you want, right? Because on-chain is real time. It's as live as possible. And the funny thing about being able to run such complex programmable logic on chain is, as a market maker, you actually have much more flexibility and much more control than you have on a centralized exchange, which is like what I think a lot of TradFi market makers miss, right? Because TradFi market makers say, oh my God, there's multiple validators, you know, how the hell do I know what the state is? How do I know, like, you know, if I even landed? You actually, like, don't need to know a lot of these things because you can program all of your logic into your prop AMM, like into your DEX, and even if you don't know what the state is, your DEX, your algorithm running on the chain knows exactly what the state is because it's running in real time. The only information that you need to bring to the chain from off the chain is pricing information, right?
Sure.
You know, like,
but can third parties market make on Humidifi?
No, I mean, it's like by design, right? Like, if a third party wants to market make, right, they make their own like prop AMM, right?
Right.
And they integrate it in the router, right? Like we can extend this to be much easier to integrate, much more permissionless, right? You know, this is just it's a mere step in the right direction, this prop AMM thing. But the key is programmable liquidity.
Yeah, okay, because that's, I guess, the piece that, like, sometimes it's like, okay, we can do this stuff on chain, but we're doing it in, what was your phrase?
on-chain
collaborative,
programmable liquidity.
collaborative products that integrate with each other. Complementary product. Like, does everybody need a complementary product offering with a market maker in order to get that type of tight experience?
No. I mean, look, like the fact that you can run so much of your logic on chain is alone extremely powerful, right? Like that like reduces like the only thing you really have to do with like landing and with like market structure to just getting that one Oracle update on chain, which like, you know, thankfully due to the work that, you know, we've done and Helios has done and Triton has done and like Alessandro has done and Jump has done, landing's actually gotten a lot easier today, right? And, you know, there's many very good RPC providers, right? You know, very good, right? Like the landing is very good. You know, like you see Wintermute on chain, they're like using all these guys, like they don't have any problems. They're doing pretty well, right?
Yeah.
You know, you see Bison Fly coming in, right? You know, they're also doing like pretty well, right? Like they're figuring the game out, right? And this is just iteration one of the game. This is a playground compared to what it's going to be, right? We can iterate on this market structure and this, you know, type of matching and make it much more formalized, much easier, and we can fix the interface a lot, right? And look, the problem AMMs want to do a speed bump. They can, right? Like they literally can, right? And like they can even do it in a composable fashion today with AMQs, right? Like you just need to define a composable asynchronous interface, right? Between the router and like the prop AMM, right? So like I can have the router, right? Like go to all my prop AMMs and say, hey, I want to do this swap, right?
Yep.
Prop AMM will come back and we'll give the router a ticket. You can do this on chain or off chain. Doesn't really matter, right? And then the key is later, after the router cleared to swap on all these prop AMMs, it can actually send that swap, you know, the maximum speed bump slots later. And in one composable transaction, you can do the entire swap. And to the user, right, like it really just looks like they had to click one button to do a swap at a future time, right? So the UX is still actually really good. And you actually like, everyone's saying, oh, AMQs break composability. They don't. You literally just have to define an asynchronous interface between the applications, right? And it's a lot easier than it sounds. You know, we actually have an internal version of this already that like maybe we'll, you know, open source at some point, right? We have a lot of experiments. I told you, we do a lot of things. We solve hard problems at Temporal. You know, at some point we'll, you know, have to start open sourcing and, you know, really showing the world more of these toys we built internally, because I mean, people wouldn't believe the things that are possible on Solana today. And I really just think like, a lot of the people funding it is just because no one has demonstrated what's possible. Right.
So what would you guys build a lot, as you've said. Why have you not built a Perps DEX?
Oh man, it's the same question that Logan asked me. I mean, where do I even start, right? Like, and it's like, I can get pretty
because it's obviously
there too, right?
Profitable. Hyperliquid's made more money than God running a Perps DEX.
No, yeah, I mean, look, it's a great business model. It's, you know, a lot of volume. Retail loves it. It's a useful product, right? It's a fun toy, right?
All the degens have stopped trading tokens and they've started trading exotic 100x leveraged products.
Yeah, look, it's like a lot of things, right? I think there's like it's a giant commitment. It's a giant investment. It'd be the biggest commitment or investment that we've ever made, right? Like I'd be spending, you know, years of my life on it, because like since not like with everything we've launched so far, we could basically just shut it down today.
Yep.
You know, we could kind of move on to the next thing or like free up that time to do other things. Like Perps, that's not true. Like as soon as we have users depositing into our Perps, like we're responsible for those user funds.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, what happens if there's a vulnerability, or, you know, then God forbid, like, I don't know, there's like many risks, right? Now, like, it's not like we're not willing to take those risks, but it's just like, look, like the downside is like,
different.
okay, we could go to jail, we could, you know, lose. I mean, I'm serious.
Yeah, no. I'm laughing because it like we say it so casually in this industry, but like
no, I mean, like if you lose,
Perps world is very different than the spot world from a CFTC and SEC standpoint.
Yeah, I mean, look, if you lose enough user funds, your prize is going to jail right now. Like, I don't think we would. Like, I think we invest a ton into our risk engine. We make it very good. It'd be top tier matching, and it'd be one of the best protocols the world has ever seen, right? And it would be the best that Solana's ever seen. But look, risks are very high. Our opportunity cost is obviously very high, right?
Yeah.
We're very, very busy. We already have a lot on our plate. We're like doing all sorts of...
Sure. So it's just,
you know,
the answer, quite frankly, is it's just not the most plus EV thing you could be doing at the moment.
That's like only part of it, right? Like okay. I can go to the retail, like the details on like why it's not like plus EV, right? Like the other are like like broader concerns we have about like the ecosystem in general today, right? I won't like elaborate too much on like what those are, right? Because I think we're very, interested and, very hell bent and dedicated like as a team into like fixing things that like we perceive are issues in the ecosystem, right? But yeah, look, I think for us to make an investment of like that size, right, there would have to be some, I think I'd want to see a lot change about the ecosystem, I think culturally, and probably need some consideration for opportunity cost, right? Not unlike another perp dex we know, right? Yeah, that's my honest, unfiltered answer.
Yep. So if we go back to MCP, both the concept and the proposal, like I want to start with like the concept of this, because I think most people I've talked to are broadly supportive of the idea that we should be able to build blocks, whatever we define as a block meaning, in multiple locations around the world. Like if that primitive existed, it would be plus EV for the ecosystem. Do you think that is, I just want to walk through these so people can figure out exactly what you're thinking on this stuff is.
Okay, so like, can you say this build blocks around the world like one more time?
So the idea that right now there's one leader at a time where it is the dictator of what goes into it, and everyone is racing to that same point.
Yeah.
If there was an ability to race to 2 points that ideally are not both in Frankfurt at a time, that would be a desirable outcome.
Yeah, I mean, I think on paper that sounds desirable. I think when you actually dive into it and think about a lot of the trade-offs, right? Like I think the answer is probably less clear. Look, I think overall, I think censorship resistance is a super important property, and MCP is one great proposal to achieve, or if I'm being academically correct here, a property called selective censorship resistance, right? That's the academically correct way to say it. I actually read the paper now, right? Like I can, we can actually talk about this academically.
Nothing is censorship resistant to a solar flare.
Yeah. Look, like there's it's more desirable than what we have now, but there's also other ways to achieve censorship resistance or selective censorship resistance, right? So like in our eyes, it's like, well, what are the trade-offs of the Constellation proposal? And then what are the trade-offs of other proposals, right? Let's lay them all out, all the upsides and downsides, right? And I really do feel like we're one of the only teams laying out any downsides. And it's not like we're anti-MCP. We just want to understand what this thing is. And there's a lot of trade-offs that people aren't talking about, right?
Yeah.
And
what would you say the biggest components are that you would like to see addressed between like the proposal that's out today and maybe a hypothetical V1.5?
Yeah, so look, like another proposal that's like a big contender for us internally is what if we just shorten slot times like crazy, like do 100 millisecond, 50 millisecond, even 20 millisecond slots. Like I really do think that's possible, right? Get to like the lowest number you can in your head of like what are the shortest slots possible. Alpenglow has 50 milliseconds. We're calling, or sorry, not Alpenglow, Constellation. We're calling them cycles, right? 50 milliseconds, right? But you don't actually remove the leader monopoly. Because in Constellation, you still have a leader. And there's only one.
Yep.
Not to be confused with the 16 proposers.
Right.
But there's only one
Everything
leader.
still gets brought to one location at some point to be executed.
Right. And like it turns out this leader actually still has a lot of power, right? Like this leader, by coordinating with the proposer, can actually capture a lot of MEV, right? A lot of MEV, right? And in some ways, it's even worse, right?
Walk me through. Okay, like let's take that kind of like proposition for a second to walk through that.
Yeah.
Give me like a credible flow of relationships or transactions where an MCP world could lead to more extraction on behalf of retail than a like Jito bundle world or something like that today.
Yeah. So I mean, I think like one is like, I mean, you're 16xing the size of like the mempool, right? And like you can make the argument that users will figure out which proposals are trusted and they'll send to them, as like Nozomi and Harmonic. We would absolutely try to do this, right? Because we don't want our users of like those systems to get sandwiched, right? But like there's a lot more path dependency when you're moving information around, right? Like you got to send it to the proposer. The proposer can leak the information. And then the leader can also leak the information. Right, because again, there's only one leader, right? And the leader reconstructs all the shreds. It sees all the transactions, right? So like, there's a lot more path dependency for information in general, right? And it's like I think there's a lot more
Right.
news for information leakage.
So if the lead, right? So this is the whole thing of like the leader could say, "Hey, I've decrypted all the data.
Yep.
I'm going to go."
Nothing's encrypted. Nothing's encrypted.
Well, sure. It can
erased or encoded.
It can reassemble
Right.
all the data, and it could say, "I'm going to send this all off to Wintermute or whatever market maker of choice
Yep.
before I actually execute it and send it off for voting."
Yeah.
But that's similar to today, right? Like in theory, a validator could all the inbound transactions it receives just reflect them right out,
Yep.
and then build a block 390 milliseconds later.
Yep.
Well, I guess walk me through the area where this becomes more of some form of attack surface than the current architecture.
Yeah, well, so the current architecture is, really bad, and like I
Sure.
don't want to. I mean, I think a 1.6 second leader monopoly is egregious, and that's something we absolutely agree on getting rid of, right? It's just how we get rid of it, right? So like I think the thing that's I don't want to compare it to what we have today, because what we have today is absolutely terrible. What I do want to compare it to are alternatives to achieve CR. Faster, more prompt inclusion, things like that. And like one of the other top contenders for this is let's just shorten slot times a ton and let's keep the single leader thing. Right. So and like MEV is just one aspect
What would
of the
that-
trade-offs here, but we can talk about MEV first.
Yeah.
So Alpenglow doesn't get rid of MEV just to start. Instead, it just distributes MEV or even redistributes MEV from one single leader, and then the MEV kind of gets redistributed among. Instead of one leader, you have 16 proposers that can all do this kind of MEV where they act early on information that they see, right? And then you have the leader, which I think has the most power in Constellation world, right? Because the leader can delay transactions. Proposer sends to a tester, right? A tester's, they all attest the shredded down information, and then they forward that shredded down information to the leader. A lot of names, a lot of roles here in this complex proposal.
It's called Constellation because it looks more like Cosmos.
There's a lot of complexity in the protocol. A lot of complexity. But,
Yes.
but. So all this stuff makes it the leader. But like, look, you might have to travel like across the world, maybe even like twice, right?
Right. It's entirely possible that a proposal, a transaction goes from Singapore to a proposer in New York to an attester in Singapore to a leader in New York.
Right. You can imagine all the MEV opportunities that actually arise here, right? Let's say I have 5% of the stake, right? That means I'm leader 5% of the time. That means I'm proposer like almost every time, right? Like the probability of me being a proposer in
Because there's 16 different proposers at a time.
Like when there's 16 of them, it's very high. Like I'm almost always going to be a proposer, which is great in some respects. I can always propose my transactions without having to go through a third party. But that also means that I'm more likely to be proposer and leader at the same time. And it's a very, very dangerous combo in Constellation that people aren't really talking about yet. This is the first conversation I think ever that's actually happening.
Because one of the interesting things is the proposal does not add new actors into the ecosystem. It adds new functions.
I mean,
right?
It's all semantics.
No. But well, it's yeah.
What do you mean? What do you mean?
Okay, so sorry. Let me clarify. So because there's not new token economic breakdowns, it's not like you have an incentive to be a proposer or an incentive to be an attester or an incentive to be a relay. The assumption, and I've talked to some of the folks who wrote the proposal, and what they believe is that we're basically now going to ask validators to serve as multiple functions or run multiple pieces of infrastructure. Yeah. So it's not like we're bringing in like the RPC market was a net new market that doesn't have token economics behind it, but it has an economic system independent of the consensus group. That's not really the way this is being talked about now. It's that it's all the same people that are now just responsible for running more infrastructure.
Yeah, no. I mean, like it's all stake weighted, right?
Yes,
like,
yes. That's a good way to put it. It's all still stake weighted.
Like the amount of time,
even though there's no state you're securing,
proposer, right? Leader. All these things are still in some way proportional to your stake, right? And so, like the first thing that we can talk about is this MEV here, right? So aside from like information, one thing that I probably shouldn't brush over is we were just talking about how valuable information is, right? That information goes into making things like predictive models, right? You can see information faster than anyone else. That often lets you act on that information faster than anyone else. So there's like inherent MEV here as a proposer and a leader, just because you can see and act on information faster than everyone else, right? Like the most dangerous combo is you're a proposer and a leader at the same time, which is actually going to be very likely if you're the leader frequently, that like you're also a proposer. That's just pretty probable. That's going to happen a lot, right? And so not only can you see all of the information because you're the leader, right? The proposers, they shred it down, erasure coding, 4x erasure, 4x erasure encoded. That's 4x redundancy, right? 4x the bandwidth on top of all this metadata. So really, I think with 800 byte transaction size being up like 8x the bandwidth, but like as I mean, like we're adding a lot of bandwidth. That's like another thing.
It's fine for me.
More about that later, right? But like then this all gets to the leader and me. I see everything. I just decode it all. And if I'm a proposer too,
so
I can act on this information immediately. And look, there's some bad, nasty things I can do, right? You know, like let's say I want to front run someone, right? Oh, I see your transaction. It's currently cycle C. I'm going to put your transaction in cycle C+1. Maybe there's other competing front runs. I'm also going to stuff all those competing front runs in C+1. And then very cheaply for free, I'm going to put my front run in cycle C. And then I've completely front run you, like stolen all your money. And then in cycle C+1 or cycle C, I can put the back run. It's a
right. And this is hard.
It's a problem. This still happens today. Like, we're not solving sandwiching. And in some ways, we could be making it worse because there's now way more avenues for information leakage.
Right. And your argument is basically like, if you can be a leader and a proposer at the same time,
happen very frequently.
Right.
Very
and even if you say, okay, well, we're going to change the spec so you cannot be the leader and proposer concurrently,
you'll just split up
side
your stake,
deals
like,
can, or side deals could exist. There's
that doesn't fix anything.
Right. Which is the famous Jurassic Park line, MEV finds a way. Yeah. Okay. What else? What else is on top of mind for you as unaddressed concerns in the MCP proposal?
So like MEV, we're not getting rid of it. Let's be very honest here. We're obviously not getting rid of MEV. We've just talked about several MEV avenues, right? You can still get the backruns, right? You can still sell top of block, right? Because this leader has a lot of power. The leader has too much power. This is like one of our main. Gonna be one of our main feasibility feedback.
And your argument is the leader continues to have too much power.
Not
that it gives it more power than it currently has.
No, yeah. I mean, like I think in some ways it has more power compared to some of the alternatives, right? Like say if you have 50 millisecond slot, 100 millisecond slot, the leader rotates every 50 milliseconds or every 100 milliseconds. This is also really good for CR. It's way easier to implement, right? And I can't delay for 300 milliseconds because my slot is only 50 milliseconds, right?
Right, because it's a use it or lose it.
Yeah, look, and like, let's be honest, when you don't have 4 network hops and all these new roles and it's like all this added complexity, it's a lot easier to do shorter slots. Like, let's be honest, that's just logic, right? Like, it's way easier to do shorter slots if we keep a single proposer model. Right. Now, granted, that single proposer for that 50 milliseconds has ultimate power, right? But at least they can't delay me for 300 milliseconds. At least they can only delay me for 50 milliseconds. And then like the next leader is Temporal or Helios or 00. And I'm like, oh my God, like I can actually land on this guy. And like now I only got delayed for 50 milliseconds instead of 100. You know, I honestly think single proposer slot times, I honestly think we can even get them to 20 milliseconds. Like this has been talked about before, right? This one's going to be more controversial, more debated.
Right, because I do
think it's possible.
Yeah, well, the most often skipped slot is the first one on a leader's rotation.
No, yeah, look.
So there is a real tax associated with leader rotation,
too. Global coordination is really, really hard, right? Now, like one thing that is really nice about Alpenglow is that it actually like Alpenglow really is a state-of-the-art protocol. Like we're really big fans of Alpenglow. Also, like read the entire paper, right? And we do think, and we thought we're at least 2 Constellation add some regressions on top of Alpenglow. Like one thing that's really nice about Alpenglow is like leaders kind of just need to keep track of their own time. They have their own local timestamps, right? But under Constellation, you now move to global UTC times, right? So like this big decentralized protocol is now just reliant on GPS and NTP, and it's like the paper even mentions like it's a really hard problem, but there's this thing called cronny that like you it says in the paper, it literally like, says like you can use cronny to like sync your clocks. I'm like, because I don't know how decentralized this is actually, right? It's like this is like another problem, and like this also fails.
There are some good clock sources now with GeoNet and those guys, but
then
still,
this also fails during a network partition when you need it the most.
Yeah,
when you need it the most is like when it's most likely to fail.
Yeah, there is also this other thing that like we have seen is that like the Solana core dev is very resistant to be dependent on anything they don't have control over. Is one thing as well that I think is worth understanding too.
Yeah, look, I mean, I really like the local clocks in Alpenglow. I really don't like this global clock synchronization thing. I think there's a lot that can go wrong. I think Alpenglow is really elegant. It's really, really nice. You just have to trust your own clock, right?
Yeah.
But now, like, what Cronny NTP is going to save me, right? Like, I get that it works on the average day, but these things have failed before, guys, right? Like, it's not, there's nothing new here, right? So yeah, I mean, like, what are some of the other trade-offs that are important to discuss, right? Like, I think one obvious criticism of paper that, like, I think we kind of alluded to in the beginning is we agree the motivation is, like, extremely important, right? The entire motivation of the paper is economic, right? Like, it makes some pretty vast claims, right? You know, how single proposer PBS systems, it basically just claims that, like, any single proposer system, like, it makes this super strong claim that any single proposer system is just going to devolve into this max extract and maximize negative harm to the user. This is just, like, at least engage into counter arguments, guys. Like if the entire premise of MCP or Constellation is economic, where's the empirical motivation? Where's the data? Where's the analysis? Show me how much damage censorship is doing. Hell, show me even how much damage the censorship could do. I think the mechanisms are very well designed. I think the paper makes a lot of cool innovations, right? You know, like this 50 millisecond economic tick concept. This is the first I've ever seen in the literature, right? Like, that's really cool. These are huge, you know, improvements. They're huge innovations, right? But like, I do think candidly the paper is somewhat lacking when it comes to, like, the economics, and the, like, incentives, right? There's just, like, if you look at the paper, there's no empirical motivation. There's no analysis. It just claims that single proposer is bad and it's going to extract, and there's no logical reasoning or logical argument. Like, why there's no data either? Like, come on, guys. Like, these are, like, some of the best researchers in the world, right? Like that, like the Alpenglow paper is brilliant, right? Like, come on, like it's like V.9, so, like, I'll give them a pass, right? Like, I love all these guys, but, like, I do think in terms of the economics and the incentives, and it's like there's no analysis of the, like, incentive compatibility of, like, any of this, right? You know, like, there's no talk about, you know, any of these attack vectors that, like, we're kind of, like, I'd really love to see more data. I'd really love to see more empirical motivation, and here's why that's really, really important. This thing is fucking complex, right? Like, I can barely keep track of all these names, the testers, proposers, leaders. Like at one point we had relays, but, like, I think those just became attesters, right? There's been many iterations of
I thought there were still relays.
Yeah, this I don't know, maybe. No, there's not. I think those are, like, the attesters, right? So, like,
but they move them in front of the leader as opposed to behind the leader.
I mean, there's been so many iterations.
Yeah, okay.
But basically how it works now is just, you know, for everyone listening, if this makes sense, is you submit transaction to proposer. Proposer coalesces these transactions into P slices. It shreds down these P slices, broadcasts them to 256 attesters, 4x erasure encoded, right? So each attester will, you know, expect to get, like, what? If there's 256 of them, you'd expect to get, like, 4 and 256 of the information because we're 4x erasure encoded, if that makes sense. Now, these guys all send them back to the leader after they've attested that this thing looks valid. You can't tell if it's valid because it's, like, you only have a part of it, but, like, it can, like, look semi-valid.
Yeah, I was actually going to wonder, like,
this is actually another really big trade-off.
Like, they're not passing, like, a fee pair check or something in the attester stage,
right? Like, you have a tiny piece of it, right? Like that, like, well, it's not even a tiny piece of it. It's a erasure encoded coding shred, right? So, like, it's just, like, some piece of data that means nothing on its own that when combined with, like,
other data,
like 64 of these other pieces of data, like, you could combine them to actually reconstruct what the real data is. And, like, I'll clarify that none of these 64 small pieces of data are actually the real data. You can extrapolate or interpolate the real data based on all the coding data, right? It's kind of like this, like, if you think of the concept, like, 2 points make a line, right? You can recover the same line with any 2 points on that line. And, like, the line is the information you're trying to recover. That's, like, erasure, encoding, intuition, like, 101. But it's pretty cool, right? Like, I've always loved math, right? Where were we? Oh yeah, that's a lot of hops, right? Like, you got hops from the proposer to the attester, you got hops from the attesters to the leader, and then you've got, you know, hops after that. So it's like we are adding more hops, we are adding more metadata. There's a good amount of metadata in these P slices. Like, it's not a small amount of bandwidth, and your 4x erasure encoding it. So yeah, look, we are going to be using more bandwidth, but maybe that's a okay trade-off for censorship resistance. It's a hell of an improvement over the protocol today, right? Like, the only question for us is, like, is it an improvement over 100 millisecond slot, 50 millisecond slot? Because I think largely a lot of the properties of 100 millisecond slot, 50 millisecond slots are much better with much less complexity. I think we can implement these things much faster. And it's a much simpler, more pragmatic solution to the censorship problem in our view right now. Like that said, I could see the Alpenglow proposal evolving into something that, we're like much more excited about, right? Like I think today we do, like there are some concerns. Now, like granted, it's a really good proposal. Like they clearly worked really, really hard on it. But yeah, look, like there are some concerns, right? And like we've not talked about all of them yet, right? Like one obvious one, right, is that like a very, very sophisticated block packer, you can run really sophisticated algorithms, right? Like block packing, the paper concedes is an NP hard problem, right? Like it states like, it just states this in the paper, like this block packing is an NP hard problem. In MCP, you essentially need the entire network to agree on a deterministic way to order those transactions. You need an ordering rule, and you need an algorithm to actually like calculate what that ordering is. When it has to be deterministic, that massively reduces like the design space of algorithms to solve that problem. And then the algorithm they have in the proposal is just the naive greedy algorithm. What do we know about greedy algorithms? They're very, very susceptible to various worst cases, right? So like, I think like...
Sure. I mean, you guys effectively used this as a quirk to just have really high fees and really low CUs to land a bunch of Oracle updates, right?
Yeah. I mean, look, I don't think anyone that wrote the paper understands how bad spam on Solana is today. There's so much failed ARB spam, so much failed crank spam, so much failed like reverting TX slop and like bandwidth, right? And a major reason we can fully pack blocks, and a major reason that we can pack the blocks as well as we do, is because we're simulating. We're running super complex algorithms, right? Like we know what the current state of the chain actually is, so we can infer what transactions are going to succeed and then which ones are trash, right? Like we can do QoS against the same guy whose failed ARB transactions have like reverted like 1 billion times, right? But like now all this stuff is going to propagate through the network, right? Like have like multiple bandwidth hops, right? It's going to get fanned out, 4x erasure encoded, all this metadata tacked on into leader, 2x erasure encoded again over rotor. And then like only then is like the whole network going to realize this is entire like this whole block is garbage, right? And like, yes, you got the inclusion fees, but what are the actual throughput implications here, right? Like there's no way in hell this naive, greedy heuristic is going to pack blocks near as well as any of the stuff that we're seeing on mainnet today, right? So like there is a real throughput cost, right? Like you cannot run sophisticated, complex block packing anymore, right? Like you can't sim on the current state, right? Like you'll only realize there's a whole bunch of conflicts when you're running your naive, greedy algorithm on chain and you realize you can't execute half them, right? Like these are real trade-offs.
So one of the things we hear a lot from folks is that the scheduler wars have been bad for Solana.
Yeah.
And this, just for folks who are less familiar, this is basically the idea that different validators are making different editorial decisions about how and what and why something should go into a block.
Yeah.
Do you think that the scheduler inconsistency is a legitimate concern?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think, like it's definitely valid, right? Like it's a really hard problem to solve, right? And Constellation doesn't solve this problem, by the way, because as we mentioned, the leader can, just like completely screw me and they can't censor me, but they can delay me, right? They can delay me quite a bit. They can sandwich me. They can do all sorts of things, right? So like, this is not going to be fixed. Like you're not getting your predictable inclusion, right? Like you'll get in the next 300 milliseconds, right? But like, look, if you got delayed like 200 milliseconds more than your competitor, this is still kind of a problem, right? Like that's sad. Look, I think it makes sense, right? Like you come from TradFi, everything's easy. Everything is predictable, right? Like there's just a simple WebSocket with simple docs, right? What did we say earlier? Distributed systems are hard, right? Like there's a fundamental trade-off between like scheduler uniformity and decentralization, right? Scheduler uniformity without MCP is just a fancy way to say monopoly, right?
Sure.
Scheduler uniformity is a monopoly with marketing. Like, let's be honest here. That's what it is, right? Like, if you have one scheduler, who wrote the scheduler? Who benefits from that type of scheduling, right? No matter how you spin it, there's probably always someone that has an advantage, right? So, this is why we made Harmonic, right? Is we believe in decentralization. We don't want any monopolies, right? We're going to come in, we're going to compete, we're going to fight to keep the network decentralized, right? And knowing that the incentives are what they are, we're going to maximize transparency, right? And we're going to make things as open and as competitive as possible, right? Now, like that said, like we've already tried 50 millisecond FBA on mainnet. It was called RevStrat, right? Like that's literally what it was, right? Cheetos sent their auctions every 50 milliseconds. RevStrat delayed all the TPU transactions, and then it just did bundle auction 50 millisecond, bundle auction 50 millisecond, bundle auction 50 milliseconds. This strategy was so bad that like Solana Foundation like basically just shut it down, and like everyone is saying like RevStrat is bad, like don't run this. And now we want to enshrine this into the protocol. All right, sure. There's your scheduler uniformity, but it's like the worst possible like strat out of like all the strats that have ever been tried, and it's inherent and intrinsic to an MCP system, right? Because you need to fan these things all over the world. You need to aggregate everything first everywhere in the world, and then agree on how to order these things everywhere in the world. And that does add like a delay, right? And like people may argue that like, oh, you get the ACK for your transaction very fast. Okay, yes, you get the ACK that it will be included in the next 300 milliseconds, but you have no idea what it did. You have no idea the state it touched. You have no idea if you got front run, right? Like you have no idea if you got outbid, right? And in many ways, it's worse, right? Because like right now, I often get that information back really fast, right? Like if it's a single proposer, I can actually figure out what the state is like 10 milliseconds later, right? And like that's happening on mainnet today, and right, and like for the same reason, right? You know, we're moving Harmonic to like a streaming shred model, right? Because look, I mean, people like it's the feedback we've been given, right? Is like look, we really like this builder marketplace competition, right? That option will still exist for like validators that want it, but people really do like the continuous information and the ability to see what the results, not just that a transaction was included, but the results of that transaction very, very quickly. Yeah. And you get that today very fast with a single leader. But under MCP, it takes you a while to like get all that information back, deterministically order it yourself, and then replay everything to like figure out what the state actually was, right?
Yeah, I do think that like two of the largest questions that not just Solana, but all blockchains will be tackling with over the next few years is the fundamental task of a validator editorial or verification?
Yeah.
And the other piece of this is who gets to decide.
Yeah.
In a distributed, decentralized system, who gets to decide that multiple schedulers are allowed, that only one scheduler is allowed, that, you know, this is how transactions flow and enter, and you cannot bring them in through any other way. And it's going to be I think, a major point of struggle for distributed systems, and we'll see different teams pick different solutions.
Yeah, look, I mean, we've always been very big believers in decentralization, right? And, you know, like Harmonic is really a champion of decentralization. And that is like a lot of the reason why I, you know, even like MCP, right?
Yeah.
It is like ultimately MCP aims to keep the protocol decentralized, and we are big supporters of decentralization, right? You know, like I would love to see the paper talk more about the motivation and, you know, argue about some of these, you know, perceived centralization concerns of like kind of what the current system is, right? Because like I think they do exist, and like there are some trade-offs, and you know, like given that these concerns do exist, like I do think there are real concerns with, you know, the current system, and I think the way to fix those concerns is by introducing censorship resistance, right? Like I think the Constellation is quite the improvement over what we have today, right? I do not know if it would be an improvement over a potential like, you know, 200 millisecond, 150 millisecond, 100 millisecond single proposer slot time model, right? Way simpler to implement, right? Like you can keep kind of the local clock thing that we have going on in Alpenglow, right? Like we've like reduced this NTP cronny, like GPS dependency, right? Coordination's way easier when you only have one proposer, right? Like, you know, we're there's a lot of things that have to coordinate in MCP, right? 16 proposers, 256 attesters, and one leader, and, you know, various MEV opportunities distributed between them, right? Like, look, it's complicated. It's going to take time to implement. We don't fully agree with the proposal as is, right? We're going to give them a lot of feedback. Everything I just told you, like, we're going to send over to them, you know, privately, and it's like we're going to talk about how to fix these things, right? Like, one of the pieces of feedback that we already gave them, right, is that like previously the tiebreaker for like two transactions that bid the same fee was the transaction hash. So you could just mine signatures with like GPUs to like try and get like a favorable placement. So the suggestion that we made to them was that instead you use a whitened signature, which basically means that every new signature that's added to the pile changes the ordering in a way that no one can predict, right? And then you also add a revert protection fee on top of that. And then the optimum in this world becomes to bid the highest revert protection fee and only send one signature. So you fix the spam, which is good. But yeah, I mean, you still have the problem that the front running will still happen. And then there's also like, yeah, I mean, that's just more and more complexity. Yeah, it's another thing that we have to add. But the whitened signature thing is pretty cool. Look into it. It's a bit to explain, but yeah, I kind of got like the gist of it. Yeah. What else? What else did I mean, there's like a lot of things, right?
Sure.
But like, I think we've
been through a ton today, though.
Yeah, look, overall, like, congrats to the Anza research team on the releasing of the Constellation paper. That's a huge milestone. I think there's a lot of great innovations in that paper. I think, look, I mean, we were really excited to see the proposal. I think it's a good foundation, right? We don't think it's enough yet, but like, I think it's a great foundation of what could be, right? Now, like in parallel, I do also want to get a proposal out there for maybe a more pragmatic approach of just massively reducing slot times, because you get a lot of censorship resistance, arguably more, right? Like, I think I would rather today have 6 proposers in a row, probabilistically one of them includes me, right? Then I'm guaranteed to land it in the next 300 milliseconds, but the leader can just completely just fuck me over, right? And delay me a long time and put all my competitors before me, right? Like, I think, yeah, look, I do kind of, prefer that world where I can't get delayed 300 milliseconds by a single actor and I have 6 shots at like 6 different actors, even if that's a bit more probabilistic, right? Because like this world is always just much simpler protocol wise. Yeah. Like I think you can do like 100 millisecond alpenglow, right? Like obviously, there's some, we might have to tweak it a bit for stability, but I really do think you can get slot times down like really low. And there's a lot of other people that agree we can get slot times much lower. The only question is like how low, right? It's like in our view, it's this trade-off between like Constellation or future Constellation after we incorporate like all this feedback. Hopefully we nerf the leader. If the leader's kind of like, OP, as they say in the current proposal. It is. Like, I mean, but it like really is, right? Like, versus like, and then it's also, like get the shorter slot time proposal out. Let's compare them. Let's weigh the trade-offs. I really do think the latter provides almost all of what we want, if not all of what we want, in a way that's much, much, much simpler than Constellation, right? But look, that's a great research achievement for the Anza research team. Definitely commend them on that paper. And we're also like, again, very, very, very big fans of alpenglow, and like we hope to see continued work come from them. And yeah, if I had suggestions for the next paper, I think they should definitely add empirical motivation. They should address like all these attacks that we're talking about. Just like overall, like kind of like incorporate like all this feedback. They should do more like calculations, like, okay, like there's a trade-off in bandwidth. You can make an argument about this inclusion latency. I don't think it's inclusion latency. I think it's more latency to like get the transaction processed and like to get the state back, which is a bit different from being guaranteed that
like your total feedback loop.
Yeah. But like, and then also the time to execution, like you're still bottlenecked by like the speed of light, right? Because like it's not like I can submit
let alone
to
the
my
public
Tokyo
internet
proposer and I get included immediately. No, that's not what happens. The proposer has to submit to the attesters. Then once it's attested, it becomes like, oh, I've been included. But then like the attesters have to forward that to the proposer, at which point the proposer actually like sequences. It's not like sequencing. There's just like, it has 6 cycles, has to put me in one of those cycles. And then it's, if that kind of makes sense. Yeah, it's complicated. It's complicated. But look, like, I mean, also nothing worth having comes easy. So look, I mean, overall, looking forward to giving them more feedback and improving over the Constellation protocol. Awesome. And it's like, I know I was, critical of it in this podcast, but look, I think there's a million people that are like championing it already. And look, I myself am a really big champion of censorship resistance. I think it's great that there's now a lot of effort to put censorship resistance into the protocol, but no one's talking about the trade-offs, guys. Someone, I mean, like, no one's talking about the trade-offs. Like, we're the only ones that are like talking about the downside of this. Everyone else is like, it's a magic bullet, but no, I'm not, because there's still MEV, there's still delaying, there's still some form of reordering. Like, it's a fact. Like, read. No one's talking about this. And look, I wish more people talked about the trade-offs, because now everyone's going to think I'm the bad guy. I'm trying to kill MCP. it's gonna be another quote tweet from Tully. Like, oh, why are you flooding MC? I'm not flooding it, man. Like I just like I want to be honest about what the trade-offs are. Like I care a lot about Solana. I care a lot about the market structure. Like we've come a long way. Like if we're gonna make the investment and like commit to doing this and commit this much time and resources and risk to doing this, we better be damn certain it's the right thing to do. There better be a lot of data to back it up. And you better address everything that I just mentioned, right? And everything that other people are going to mention too, right? Open, constructive discourse is extremely important. And yeah, look, I don't think this is fun. I think I just want to like be honest about what the trade-offs are.
Yep.
And look, let's make Solana better, guys. And that requires being honest about the costs.
Yeah. Well, I will say we will have Anza in this exact room in 2 days, and so
And then we'll get everyone on together.
Hey,
How about that?
That's if you guys say yes to it, we'll gladly do it. Yeah.
We'll get Gito on too.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, hey, if folks are interested in learning more about what you guys are building at Temporal, what's the best place for them to check it out?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, we have various offerings, right? It's like we're not, secret about what these offerings are. It's like, oh no, you only criticize it because of Harmonic. Oh, yeah, like disclaimer, like yes, if MCP passes, we're gonna have to rewrite a lot of Harmonic, right?
Sure, that's true for every RPC. That's true of every block
On
builder.
my Twitter profile, like I don't hide this at all, right? But like I try to make really objective arguments, right?
Sure.
And hopefully I seemed pretty objective on this podcast. His man's laughing. He's like, no, you definitely. I mean, look, I do think the arguments stand on their own merit, though, right?
Sure. This is why we're having this conversation.
I think the only reason
so the people at home can decide for themselves.
Yeah. And I think someone has to be more critical and talk about the trade-offs. I guess this has to be us. I guess we have to be the bad guys, right? But like again, we're very supportive of CR. And to actually answer your question, so Harmonic is harmonic.gg. We have a cool block explorer you can check out to see what's going on in the dark forest. Explore.harmonic.gg. Nozomi is use.temporal.xyz. All about Temporal is temporal.xyz. Stay posted for upcoming writings, some of which will be about MCP and how we could potentially make the existing proposal better, and some of these trade-offs, right? Pending peer review from all of our friends at various other Solana orgs. Humidify is humidify.xyz or humidify.gg. And yeah, stay tuned. We're going to ship even more in 26 than we did in 25. So yeah, let's have some real fun.
Excellent. Well, thank you for coming on today.
Thank you, Austin.
And I'll see you on Twitter.
Will do.